Don, thank you very much. It's a treat and an honor to be the graduation speaker for the AUIS class of 2014. I flew here from Istanbul a couple of days ago. And when you fly here from Istanbul, all you see are, for long stretches, are empty, barren mountains. I said to myself, how could there be an American university at the end of this flight? And then I get here to Sulaimani, and I see this beautiful flower that has grown in this desert. You should be so proud of what you've achieved. Since I only have a few minutes to share some thoughts with you, the AUIS class of 2014, I will confine myself to one theme: what you owe yourselves, what you owe your countries, what you owe your planet, and what you owe your mother and father. What you owe yourselves is an understanding of the world you're going into and how you can best thrive within it. And what is that world? Well, for starters, let me put it to you this way. When I was last sitting where you are today, getting my master's degree in 1978, 36 years ago, life was easy. All I had to do when I walked out of my graduation was to find a job. The difference between me then and you now is you will have to invent a job. Oh, don't get me wrong, you may get lucky and land your first job, but even then, to hold that job, advance in that job, thrive in that job, you will be asked much more than my generation to reinvent, re-engineer, redesign, and retool your skills so many more times to keep or advance in that job. Because machines, robots, and software today are on a relentless march, devouring not only blue-collar jobs on the factory floor, but also white-collar jobs. Let me give you 3 examples. The New York Times the other day had a big story about farms in upstate New York that are now using robots to milk cows. Robots to milk cows. So if you are a farmhand now in upstate New York and you want to milk cows, you need to know how to operate the robot. Another example. I was in San Francisco last year speaking at the New School Summit, and I rented a Hertz car. And in the middle of my trip, I had to change all my plans. When I was going to return the car, where I was going to return the car. No problem, I called 1-800-HERTZ. I got the automatic voice on the phone. It said, give me your reservation. I gave my reservation number, and then I waited for the voice to say, now please stay on the line. A Hertz representative will be with you shortly. Your call may be recorded for quality purposes. I never got the Hertz person. I did the entire transaction with artificial intelligence. I made a note to tell my girls, hope you weren't planning to be a Hertz service representative when you graduate. Third example, I recently did a documentary on climate change in the Middle East. I was in Yemen. I flew to Heathrow Airport in London. I was in the passport line. The man in front recognized me. He had read The World is Flat. We started talking. And I did with him what I do with everyone everywhere. I started interviewing him. I said, what do you do? He said, I'm in the software business. I said, software? I love software. What's your software? He said, our software is designed to make every lawyer obsolete. TurboTax for the legal profession. It gets a big applause in America whenever I tell this story. But think about those 3 jobs. The farmhand milking the cow, the Hertz service representative, and the lawyer now, even the lawyer, is being challenged by software and technology. Why is all of this happening? Well, again, the short answer is that something really big happened in the world in the last decade. But it was disguised by the financial crisis and post 9/11 and many other things. The world in the last decade actually went from connected to hyper-connected, and from interconnected to interdependent. Now, I know a little bit about this subject because, as Dawn said, back in 2004, I sat down to write a book called The World is Flat, about how the world was getting connected. And I wrote that, I started in 2004. In 2011, I wrote another book about America with a friend of mine called That Used to Be Us. But when I sat down in 2011 to write the new book, the first thing I did was get the first edition of The World is Flat off my bookshelf, just to remind myself what I had written. I opened it up to the index. I looked under A, B, C, D, E, F, F, A, F, A, C, F, A, C, E. Facebook wasn't in it. That's right, when I was running around the world in 2004 saying the world is flat, we're all connected, Facebook didn't exist. Twitter was still a sound. The cloud was still in the sky. 4G was a parking place. LinkedIn was a prison. Applications were what you sent to college. Big data was a rap star. And Skype was a typographical error. All of that. Can I do that again, Dawn? I love doing that, okay? All of that happened after I wrote The World is Flat. So what does that tell you? It tells you that something really big happened in just the last 10 years in the wiring and plumbing of the world. We have gone from connected to hyper-connected in a very short time, and that is what's enabling Hertz to get rid of all its service people and replace them with automated representatives, and for people to think about even replacing lawyers. Now here's what's really scary. You haven't seen anything yet. Things are about to get really fast because of Moore's law and the relentless doubling of computing power. Andrew McAfee and Eric Brynjolfsson, who just wrote a book, wonderful book I recommend, called The Second Machine Age, tell the story to illustrate the doubling of computing power. Tell the story of the man who invented chess. He invented the game of chess, and the emperor was so happy with this game. He said to him, "Good sir, I'm so happy with this game of chess. How can I reward you?" And the man said, "All I want to do is be able to feed my family." He said, "No problem, what would you like?" He said, "I would just like you to take 1 grain of rice and put it on the first square of the chessboard, and then double it with each square. 2 on the second, 4 on the next, 8 on the next, 16. And the emperor said, "No problem, it will be done." But what the emperor didn't know is when you double something 63 times, the number you get is 18 quintillion. We have just entered the second half of the chessboard, where the doubling of computing power is going to start to produce some really, really high numbers. And that's why you get robots that can milk cows, and you get cars that can drive themselves. In fact, McAfee and Brynjolfsson point out, you're all too young to remember, but Barham and I are old enough to remember, because we grew up with a cartoon called The Jetsons. The Jetsons. And it was a science fiction cartoon about the future. Do you know that the father in the Jetsons, Mr. George Jetson, drove his own flying saucer? In other words, when the people who created the Jetsons 50 years ago, they could not imagine what Google already has invented, a self-driving car. George Jetson drove his own flying saucer. Your kids will not. That's the bad news. Now, or the challenging news. The good news is that the tools you will need to thrive in this world, to invent a job, or more frequently reinvent yourselves, are becoming much more easily available at lower prices, even often now for free. All of this hyper-connectedness has created a global education, commercial, communications, innovation platform on which more people can start stuff, collaborate on stuff, learn stuff, make stuff, and work with more other people on stuff than ever before. Websites like Kickstarter enable anyone to crowdsource an idea. You don't need Wall Street anymore. 3D printing will enable you to turn out a prototype all by yourself on anything you can imagine. The cloud will give individuals access to computing power and storage for dimes and nickels. Open source tools will provide software programs to innovate or run a business where you can start a global business from day one. And if you want to prepare for your GRE exams, you can go pay one of those companies like Kaplan, or you can now go to Khan Academy online and get the best lessons in the world for free. But this huge expansion in individual ability to do all these things comes with one big difference from when I graduated. More now rests on you. If you are self-motivated, wow, this world is tailored for you. But if you are not self-motivated, government will do less for you. Companies will do less for you. Unions can do less for you. There will be fewer limits on you, but also fewer guarantees than my generation. The ceilings that hold you down are disappearing, but so are the floors that hold you up. Your next boss does not care what you know. The Google machine knows everything. Your next boss will only care about what you can do with what you know. That will be the true metric. In other words, the old job of just answering the phone at Hertz and changing my reservation is gone. But something tells me there's going to be a new and better job at Hertz, helping families plan their summer vacations, or business executives their next trip so they get the most out of where they are going for the best value. Lawyers will still have jobs, they'll still make living, but it won't be writing basic wills and contracts. It'll be going out and finding ways to give advice to people for how to stay out of court, for how to form a business, for how to start something. Every one of us, me included, will have to find our unique value add that will justify why we should be hired, why we should be promoted, why we should be advanced. It all sounds a little scary, I know. But change is always that way. If horses could have voted, there never would have been cars. I prefer to see the glass half full. In this hyper-connected world, we're going to have so many more people working on solving the world's biggest problems, and they will all be able to participate in that effort for less money from more places like Kurdistan with more tools than ever before. And we're going to have so many more jobs that get to focus on solving people's real problems and empowering people to get so much more out of their potential. So how will you know if your degree here is worth something? Worth all the money that your parents saved and paid for it? There's a simple answer. If you left here today ready for a job that has not been invented, you got your money's worth. Let me repeat that. If this school prepared you for a job that has not yet been invented, then it did its job. If you have left here full of self-motivation, a love of learning and relearning, and a network of friends and colleagues with whom to collaborate on making the world a more prosperous, a more understanding, a more healthy, and more comfortable place for more people, you're going to be just fine, no matter what field you go into. Now that we've established what you owe yourselves, let me say a few words about what you owe your countries. You, the next generation of Kurdish and Arab student leaders. Your countries need your talent, passion, and creativity more than ever, and none more than Iraq. One way or another, this whole region of the world, where politics seem to be frozen for so many years, is unfreezing. From Tunisia to Tahrir Square, from Tripoli to Yemen, from Damascus to Baghdad, young people like yourselves have been demanding two things. One is to be treated as citizens, citizens with both equal rights and responsibilities. And the other is to live in societies that allow, enable, and empower them to realize their full potential as human beings. Having been in Tahrir Square and Taksim Square and Beirut Square and Kiev Square, those were the two messages I heard over and over. I am somebody, and stop getting in my way. The young people who launched these revolutions had enormous courage. But other than Tunisia, none of the Arab Springs has achieved its full promise yet. That's going to be your job. And this is what you owe your countries. If you look at Tunisia and ask why it has managed to make the transition from autocracy to multi-party democracy better than anyone else so far, several things stand out. The first is civil society. Tunisia is the Arab country that had the most robust civil society institutions, especially powerful labor unions, business, human rights, election monitoring, and professional associations that could arbitrate and mediate between the different parties and communities. I have been enormously impressed at the amount of civil society institutions springing up here in Kurdistan. This university is one indication of that. It is a sign of health. But so many color revolution and Arab Springs failed because after the tweeting was over and after the Facebook posts were all posted, they failed to build organizations and institutions that could take their ideas and turn them into governance, laws, and parties that could win elections. Now that you are graduating, whatever work you end up doing, donate a little time to some kind of civil society institution, something that helps promote good governance and free press, anti-corruption, transparency, peaceful coexistence between your communities in your own country. And promise me one thing. Promise me you will get out of Facebook and into somebody's face. Tunisia also benefited from an attitude that was not apparent at first and required struggle and bloodshed to establish. But it was an attitude of no victor, no vanquished. No group in society gets to have it all. Everyone who is ready to play by the rules and respect elections should be included and feel a sense of ownership in the future. The number one reason that nations succeed is that they have inclusive political and economic institutions that reinforce one another. The number one reason nations fail is because one party, one sect, one faction tries to have it all. Finally, Tunisia also benefited from the fact that it had a critical mass of educated and empowered women. Wherever you have a critical mass of educated and empowered women, you have a stronger workforce, a more inclusive society, and a real bulwark against religious extremism. I guess one way of summing up everything I'm saying here is that you owe it to your societies and the next generation of graduates of this amazing university to be fighters for pluralism. Political pluralism, gender pluralism, religious pluralism, intellectual pluralism. We in America have many problems, more than I could catalog here. But what makes me still an optimist about my country is that we are still a pluralistic society. We have twice elected as our president a black man whose middle name is Hussein, whose grandfather was a Muslim, who defeated a woman in order to run against a Mormon. Where pluralism flourishes and good ideas, good ideas, best practices, and merit always have a chance to win. So be fighters for pluralism. You owe that to your countries. Finally, you owe something to your planet. Washington State Governor Jay Inslee said the other day, we are the first generation, you are the first generation, to feel the impact of climate change, and you're also the last generation that can do something about it. You have an amazing environment here in Kurdistan. The Kurdish people have fought for so long to have their own place in the sun. You owe it to yourselves and your children to be guardians of these mountains, forests, valleys, streams, and biodiversity. Not only because it is the right thing to do, but because they will be a source of tourism, because they will be an inspiration for your poets and painters and writers, and because nature provides so many services, from water filtration to soil preservation to clean air, and most of all because Kurdistan's future can't just be about nurturing its oil wells. You are lucky to have some oil for the income it can provide. Your government needs to spend that wisely, but those wells of oil will eventually run dry. Kurdistan's future, Iraq's future, will only be bright if it is attracting and nurturing the oil wells that never run dry. That's you, the AUIS class of 2014. The oil wells that never run dry are oil wells built on human talent. Only by tapping your people, not just your oil wells, only by tapping your men and your women and encouraging them to start things and collaborate on things and invent things, will you truly have a strong economy built on the most renewable resource of all, human energy. But there's one thing about knowledge workers like yourselves They like to live and raise their children in nice places where the air is clean and the water is pure and the hillsides are forested. Silicon Valley is not in Silicon Valley for nothing. Keep Kurdistan and this school beautiful and green and healthy, and people will not only come here to seek refuge from the madness around you. They will come here because they know they can unlock their talents here, realize their full potential here, and breathe air here that is both clean and free. In the long run, that will pay so many more dividends than any oil well you ever dig. But as I said at the beginning, you owe something also to your parents. I suspect many of your parents have sacrificed a lot so you could be here this day. So let me share with you a little story that I always use to end every commencement address. It's from America. When you were just in elementary school, there was a legendary American football coach at the University of Alabama named Bear Bryant. And late in his career, after his mother had just died, Bell South Telephone Company asked Bear Bryant to do a television commercial. The commercial was supposed to be very simple, just a little music, and Coach Bear Bryant saying in his tough coach's voice into the camera, "Have you called your mama today?" On the day of the filming, though, when it came time for Coach Bryant to recite his simple line, he decided to add something. He looked into the camera and said, "Have you called your mama today? I sure wish I could call mine." That was how the commercial ran, and it got a huge response from audiences. My father died when I was 19. He never got to see me do what I loved. I sure wish I could call him. Same with my mother. Your parents love you more than you will ever know. So if you take one lesson away from this speech today, please take this. Call your mother. And your father. You will always be glad you did. Well, AUIS class of 2014, that just about does it for me. I'm fresh out of material, so let me try to sum up my message this way. One of the oldest cliches in commencement speeches is to tell graduates, do what you love. Because 100% of people who do what they love what they do. But you know, that's not really a cliche anymore. You might as well do what you love because all the boring stuff is going to be done by robots, software, and machines. The things that robots and software can't do, though, are bring passion, a personal touch, a human connection, and human creativity to what they do. Those are all the things that people who do what they love bring to their jobs every day. So in this coming age, when your kids won't even have to drive their own flying saucers, do what you love. Or as the old adage attributed to Mark Twain put it, always work like you don't need the money. Always love like you've never been hurt. Always sing like nobody's listening. Always dance like nobody's watching. And always live like it's heaven on earth. God bless and good luck.